It was an old, dusty evening when Lily found herself stumbling across a peculiar book hidden beneath the floorboards of her new apartment. She was in the midst of unpacking when a creak of the wooden planks drew her attention. Beneath them, nestled deep within the hollow space, lay an old leather-bound diary, its cover weathered and almost blackened by time. It was neither a journal she recognized, nor one that seemed to belong to anyone she knew. But something about it pulled her in. Curiosity. Who could resist it? Especially when it felt like the book was calling her name. Do you believe in fate, dear reader? Lily had never been one to believe in such superstitions. But this was different. This book felt almost alive. The diary was peculiar, not just in the way it looked, but in the way it felt. As soon as Lily picked it up, an inexplicable shiver ran down her spine. She could hear the wind howl outside her window, yet it seemed strangely quiet inside, as if the entire apartment had fallen silent, holding its breath. Would you dare write your name? The question appeared on the first page, written in jagged, red ink. Lily thought she must have imagined it. Surely, it was just her mind playing tricks on her. But the words stayed there, staring back at her like a challenge. Every fiber of her being screamed to shut the book and throw it away, but another part of her, an overwhelming part, urged her to read more. She flipped through the pages, each filled with cryptic entries, odd symbols, and disturbing sketches that made her skin crawl. It wasn't long before she came across more unsettling phrases, each one more cryptic than the last. Beware the name you write, for it will bind you forever. What was that supposed to mean? Despite her growing unease, Lily couldn't stop herself. She was entranced, drawn into a web she couldn't quite escape. And then, a strange compulsion took hold of her. It was as if the diary itself was urging her to do something terrible. Her hands trembled as she took the pen that lay beside the book and dipped it in the ink. The question still burned in her mind. Would you dare write your name? Without thinking, Lily scrawled her name across the page. As soon as the ink touched the paper, a cold gust of wind slammed the apartment door shut, plunging her into darkness. The sudden chill took her breath away, and the eerie silence returned, more profound than ever. She stood frozen in the dark, her heart pounding in her chest. What had she done? Before she could process the events unfolding, she heard a soft whisper from the shadows, a voice so faint she thought she imagined it. You shouldn't have written your name. Her breath hitched in her throat. She was not alone. The air around her thickened, suffocating her as if something unseen was drawing closer. It was as though the very walls were closing in on her. A flicker of light flashed, and the room seemed to warp around her. The diary, still open on the floor, began to tremble, its pages turning on their own, as though they were being blown by a breeze, though the windows were sealed shut. It was then that Lily saw it. A dark figure emerged from the very pages of the diary. At first, it was a shadow, faint and indistinct, but as it took shape, she saw it clearly. A tall, gaunt figure with hollow eyes and a mouth twisted into a grotesque grin. The creature's features were shifting, constantly warping like a reflection in a distorted mirror, but its presence was unmistakable. It was the embodiment of something ancient and malevolent, something that existed beyond the realm of human understanding. The figure reached out toward her, its long, bony fingers stretching toward her face. You wrote your name. Now you belong to me. Lily's blood ran cold as she staggered backward, her mind scrambling for a way out. But the apartment had become a labyrinth, the walls bending and shifting around her, trapping her in an endless maze. Every direction she turned seemed to lead her deeper into the darkness. No matter how far she ran, she couldn't escape the figure. What do you want from me? Lily cried, her voice trembling with terror. The figure didn't respond with words. Instead, it reached for her once more, its skeletal hand grazing her cheek as an unnatural cold seeped into her skin. She gasped, feeling her strength drain away as if the life was being siphoned out of her. Suddenly, she felt a strange pressure building in her chest, as though something heavy was pressing down on her heart. She could barely breathe, her vision narrowing as the creature's grip tightened around her. "Do you remember what I said?" the figure whispered, its voice now echoing in her mind. "Once your name is written, there's no turning back. You are mine." Lily wanted to scream, to cry for help, but the words wouldn't come. She had sealed her fate the moment she put pen to paper, and now she had to face the consequences. It was then that Lily noticed something strange in the corner of her eye, a glimmer of light in the distance. Her instinct screamed at her to go toward it, to escape this nightmare. And so she ran. She ran with everything she had, stumbling through the maze of her apartment, feeling the walls shift and warp around her as though the very building itself was alive and trying to consume her. She reached the light, and with trembling hands, she grabbed the doorknob and yanked it open. But what she found on the other side wasn't the familiar hallway of her apartment. It was a reflection of the room she had just fled, a twisted version of it. Empty, decayed, and covered in shadows. She had walked straight into another nightmare. A low growl emanated from behind her, and when she turned, she saw the figure once again. Its form was now fully tangible, standing before her like a predator cornering its prey. "No matter where you go," it whispered, "you cannot escape. You belong to the diary now." Lily stumbled back in horror, her hands shaking uncontrollably. How could this be happening? How could a simple diary, one she found by accident, hold such power? She felt herself weakening, her body and mind fading as the creature's presence grew stronger. She knew she couldn't outrun it, couldn't hide. There was no escape. She had sealed her fate when she wrote her name. But here's the real question for you, reader. Would you dare to write your name? Think about it. That innocent act might seem harmless at first, but in reality, it could bind you to something far darker, far more powerful than you could ever imagine. Lily's story is only one of many. Countless others have succumbed to the curse, trapped by the very words they wrote. And it's not just Lily who's trapped. There are others out there who've encountered the diary. Perhaps someone you know. Could you handle it? Would you risk it? Maybe you shouldn't even think about it. You may never know what happens once you cross that line. But I'm asking you now, would you dare? Would you write your name? Before you answer that question, do me a favor. If you're intrigued, if you want to know more, if you feel like there's something more to this tale, subscribe to the channel. There are more stories to uncover, more dark corners to explore, and more mysteries to solve. But be warned, once you cross that threshold, there's no going back. Don't say I didn't warn you.